Where to start with the indictment and arrest of former President Donald Trump? Trump, after his arrest and his not guilty plea, spoke for about 25 minutes.
And I never thought anything like this could happen in America. Never thought it could happen. The only crime that I have committed is to fearlessly defend our nation from those who seek to destroy it. From the beginning, the Democrats spied on my campaign. Remember that? They attacked me with an onslaught of fraudulent investigations.
Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg gave a press conference and was asked why charges are being brought now. What new evidence, asked this NBC reporter, has been uncovered?
Mr. Bragg, Garrett Haake with NBC News. Your predecessor took a hard look at this case and decided not to charge it. Federal prosecutors took a hard look at this case and decided not to charge it. Do you believe you have new evidence that led you to decide to charge this, or why now?
Well, as I just mentioned, we have had available to the office additional evidence that was not in the office's possession prior to my time here. And as to your part of your question about the federal, we have a distinct and strong, I would say profound, independent interest in New York State. This is the business capital of the world. We regularly do cases involving false business statements. The bedrock, in fact, the basis for business integrity and a well-functioning business marketplace is true and accurate record keeping. That's the charge that's brought here, falsifying New York State business records.
Bragg explained further.
Donald Trump, executives at the publishing company American Media Incorporated, Mr. Cohen, and others agreed in 2015 to a catch and kill scheme. That is, a scheme to buy and suppress negative information to help Mr. Trump's chance of winning the election. As part of this scheme, Donald Trump and others made 3 payments to people who claimed to have negative information about Mr. Trump. To make these payments, they set up shell companies, and they made yet more false statements, including, for example, in AMI, American Media Incorporated's business records. One of the 3 people that they paid to keep quiet was a woman named Stormy Daniels. Less than 2 weeks before the presidential election, Michael Cohen wired $130,000 to Stormy Daniels' lawyer. That payment was to hide damaging information from the voting public. The participant scheme was illegal. The scheme violated New York election law, which makes it a crime to conspire to promote a candidacy by unlawful means. The $130,000 wire payment exceeded the federal campaign contribution cap, and the false statements in AMI's books violated New York law. That is why Mr. Trump made false statements about his payments to Mr. Cohen.
Now, a few days ago, even CNN's Van Jones urged Alvin Bragg to move back from the brink, as Jones put it. And about this indictment, Jones wasn't very impressed.
I worry. I mean, look, if this is the only pebble that gets thrown at Donald Trump, it's a very small pebble. If it's the first pebble in an avalanche of other indictments that strike more to the heart of, I think, people's core concern about Donald Trump, which is his threat to democracy. So this is the first pebble. The next one is about the election interference in Georgia. The next one is about the coup, the insurrection, January 6th. The next one's about him hoarding these documents and why. Then it begins to fit. But if this is the only pebble, it's not much of a pebble. And I do think the backlash against this pebble might cow other people who might otherwise have been courageous enough to step forward.
Now, Bragg, when he entered office in 2022, declined to pursue the investigation. This prompted 2 assistant DAs to resign. One of them, Mark Pomerantz, wrote a book, in and of itself an act of questionable ethics, outlining the crime that Trump allegedly committed. And the reaction to that book no doubt played a role in pressuring Bragg to reconsider. Now, the Federal Election Commission voted 4-1 to discontinue its investigation of a campaign finance violation, a violation that the indictment suggests Trump committed. The DOJ dropped its investigation and Bragg's predecessor, Cyrus Vance, declined to charge Trump. Based on these grounds, will the indictment even survive a motion to dismiss?
Neil, if the judge does his job right here, the case should be dismissed, and it actually should be dismissed quickly. I agree with what my friends have said, but I think this is actually worse than what we anticipated, because what we anticipated was that they were trying to bootstrap a misdemeanor, which, by the way, they'd have a good deal of difficulty proving if it was just a misdemeanor. But they need to show that he concealed another crime in supposedly falsifying the business records. And what we've thought up until now is that he was going to use that as an avenue to enforce federal campaign finance law. Now, maybe that's what he's planning to do, but he's got to tell us what he's planning to do. And more importantly, he's got to tell Donald Trump. So I think this indictment, even before you get to the statute of limitations and whether he's got jurisdiction to enforce federal law, I would dismiss it on its face because it fails to state a crime. Here, it fails to state a crime 34 times.
Now, while George Soros claims he did not give money to Alvin Bragg, Bragg's largest contributor is an organization funded by Soros. So yes, Soros money elected Bragg. Now, the Trump-hating media that for 7 years has been obsessed with getting Trump are allegedly sad. So very, very sad.
It's a sad day for America. Hard stop.
This is no time for celebration. I think it's sad.
I have fought Trump for a long time, but I'm sad that this has happened.
How are you feeling about a historic day? It's sad.
And this is a day of profound sadness that an ex-president is indicted, but it's also a time to celebrate.
Because it's a sad moment to see a former president have to do this, even though we feel it could lead to justice.
If you don't see this as a sad day for America.
It's a sad day for America.
It's a sad day. Well, I don't think anybody can consider it a good day.
Regardless of anything, it's just really sad.
It's a sadness, I think, that we got to this point.
I just want to remain measured.
The left, full of somber support.
I think really this should be a somber moment. It is a serious, somber, solemn moment.
It's obviously a somber moment, and it's a sad moment.
Well, it's really a sad day when we get to this point.
Incredibly sad day for our country.
It is a serious night and a somber moment for our country.
That this is a really sad moment and a perilous moment.
I bet you they were dancing the jig when this news came down. But about all of this, President Biden was not sad. In fact, Biden was amused.
Is the indictment your predecessor politically
Look at that grin. Ear to ear, baby. A New York Times reporter pressed the press secretary about why Biden is not commenting. After all, Biden has commented on all sorts of other things. Note, too, by the way, she lied once again and claimed officers died on January 6th. No officer died at the Capitol building that day. None.
His reticence, and what's the difference between that and this?
Done.
I'm done. Sorry.
No, it's okay. But with all seriousness, January 6th was a devastating day. Like, you guys, I think if you guys weren't there, some of your colleagues were on Capitol Hill. We had law enforcement, police officers who were attacked, who died. And what we saw on that day was an attack on our democracy. It was a devastating, devastating day in our history. And it was a moment for this president to have spoken to, right? You had millions and millions of Americans who watched what was happening on Capitol Hill, something that many of us, I've never seen it, and many of us had never, ever seen before, you know? And it was something that needed to be spoken to. When you see something like that, our democracy, literally our democracy under attack. And so the president will never shy away when it comes to our democracy, when it comes to the fabric of who we are as a country and what makes this country what it is. And so it was a different moment and a different time.
Follow up.
I know, but let me.
Sure, go ahead.
When it comes to these types of cases, these criminal, like specific cases, we're just not going to comment. I know there's a broad. I get you. I know there's a broader question of what this means, the precedent, and what the president is going to decide or make decisions that he might make, like hypothetical questions. I'm just not going to comment from here on that.
Again, I was asking why you weren't going to comment on that.
I'm hoping that I laid that out for you, and I just laid out why we commented on January 6th, and we're just going to be very mindful. These are ongoing cases.
100 cases involving Americans whose freedom was at risk.
I hear you, but
right?
this is something that all of Americans watch in real time. And people died. People died.
I don't need a lecture on the fact that people
But you're lecturing me.
But
you're lecturing me. Yes, you are.
I'm asking questions, and what I'm saying is there are millions of people out there watching today. You called January 6th historic. It was absolutely historic, and none of us had ever seen that before. Nobody's seen this before either. There are millions and millions of Americans watching the first time in 250 years a former president be hauled into court and processed for arrest. That means something. That has some effect, potentially, I suspect, on American democracy and on how the rest of the world. The president has talked a lot about how the rest of the world sees the United States in the wake of January 6th. Totally valid. Why isn't there a similar kind of assessment about how the world is watching us now? Good or bad? I'm not making a judgment whichever way. I'm just saying. And
I hear your question. January 6th was a different moment. It just was. It was something that was incredibly devastating. People died on that day and were harmed. And it was just something that we saw visually, that we reacted to, and many people were scared in that moment. And as the president was taking office as the next president of the United States, a president that ran on bringing the country together, on protecting our democracy, it was something that it was important to speak to at that moment. And also, we know that Americans still very much care about this. When it comes to a criminal investigation like this, that is ongoing, we are just not going to comment. We're not going to interfere. We're not going to politically interfere from here. And we've been consistent. We've been very consistent. I know you're bringing up January 6th. I just laid out why we believe that was very different.
Paul Kamenar is lead counsel for the National Legal and Policy Center. He joins us now. Paul, where do you want to start?
Oh, geez, I don't know. Yeah, it is a sad day, Larry. It's a sad day for American jurisprudence and justice for Alvin Bragg to single out Donald Trump. He campaigned on getting Trump, and the evidence is very thin. The indictment is 34 counts, but it's basically one count repeated 34 times that simply says there was a false business entry that covered up another crime. No crime is mentioned. There's this other rambling statement of facts, so to speak, that says, well, there was these hush money payments to Stormy Daniels and so forth, which, by the way, is totally legal. That is not a crime. Hush money payments are basically non-disclosure agreements done every day. So what is he saying is, well, there's this false business record because you said that non-disclosure agreement payment was to reimburse Michael Cohen, the attorney, for, quote, legal expenses. And that's false. And, oh, my God, we got to prosecute you on that. But that's a nothing burger misdemeanor. 2-year statute of limitations, which is come and gone. So he says, well, how am I going to get Trump? Because I promised to get Trump. Aha. We'll say that the crime that he was doing this for was to affect his election in 2016. And let's see. Oh, then that becomes a campaign contribution to your campaign, and you did. That's illegal because you can't accept that kind of in-kind contribution. There's all kinds of things wrong with that. Number one, Alvin Bragg has no jurisdiction over federal election campaign law. And as one of the clips showed with Andrew McBride, and you said the Federal Election Commission and the Justice Department looked at this so-called federal crime, which only they have jurisdiction over, and they didn't file charges. And rightly so with respect to the Department of Justice, because they tried this once before, Larry, against Democratic Senator John Edwards when he ran against Obama in 2008. And John Edwards got $900,000 in a hush money payment from a major mega donor to pay off John Edwards' mistress and for his love child. And they said, oh, that's a campaign contribution. That's unlawful. They filed criminal charges against John Edwards. What happened? The jury came back, acquitted John Edwards on one of the counts, and were hung on the other counts. The Justice Department dropped it, saying, look, we're not going to retry you. This was a screwball theory of criminal law. And so that's why they didn't go forward. But Alvin Bragg, he says, well, I'm going to resurrect this theory. And it reminds me, Larry, of Joseph Stalin's motto of his former Soviet secret police, whose motto was, show me the man and I'll show you the crime. Well, that's what they're doing here. They're going after Trump. They're scratching their heads saying, how are we going to come up with a crime? Aha, here's this 2-bit false reports, etc., on his business reports. It really is pathetic, and it is a sad day for American justice and the unequal application of justice and weaponizing the enforcement and powers to go after political enemies.
Got a question for you. Are you concerned with stock market volatility?
Markets closing in on their worst year since the financial crisis.
Since 2020, the Dow closed down more than 1,100 points.
Financial markets had their worst day since the start of the pandemic.
Do you really trust this economy?
The U.S. economy could be headed for a recession.
Tonight, the alarming spike in inflation soaring to its highest level in nearly 40 years.
What if you can invest in a portfolio with a high fixed rate of return that's not correlated to the stock market? Well, you can turn your monthly income on or off, compound it, whatever you choose, and get this, there is no loss of principal if you need your money back, and absolutely no fees. Just log on to investyrefy.com. Folks, I personally invest with my own money with YRefi. So log on to investyrefy.com or call 888-YREFI24. That's 888-YREFI24. Paul, even if you could argue the violation of the federal statute, you're talking about 5 years. It's still too late. There's a 2-year for the misdemeanor and a 5-year for the. It's still too late.
Well, yeah, but here's what I think they're going to do. They're probably going to pull a fast one because the last payment that Trump made, the check, was in December 2017. And you'll say, well, wait a minute, Paul. 5 years is December 2022, and here it is, April 23.
Right.
So hasn't the 5 years passed? I agree, but they may pull a rabbit out of the hat saying, aha, wait a minute. Governor Andrew Cuomo, back during COVID, had a 7-month hiatus for statute of limitations due to COVID. So they may pull that trick and try to say the statute hasn't run yet. But even if the statute hasn't run, it should be dismissed on legal grounds. It should be dismissed on selective prosecution grounds. And there should be a change of venue. They should maybe recuse this judge because this judge's daughter worked for Kamala Harris and now works for Biden. So there's an appearance of bias. Donald Trump last night at Mar-a-Lago said, wait a minute, this was the judge that ruled against my company on the tax case against Weisselberg, and therefore he had it in for me from the get-go. So there's all kind of things that this case should never have been brought at all. It really is a sad day to do. And they're saying, well, wait a minute, Alvin Bragg, you're saying this is serious crimes. We can't let this go by. Wait, you're letting criminals in New York go by that push people off subway platforms, right, that mug people in the streets. They get a free pass all the time. You downgrade felonies to misdemeanors. And here you're taking a misdemeanors and ratcheting it up to this fake felony. So this Alvin Bragg is really a pathetic character.
Paul, how confident are you that this will be dismissed?
Well, I think there's very good grounds I'm just afraid that the judge may not dismiss it and say, well, let's let the jury decide. Now, some of those rulings may be appealable to the higher court of appeals in New York, and they may get some remedies there. But Larry, this is going to go well into 2024.
Right.
It's already interfering with the presidential campaign, and now there's talk that maybe the judge may want to put a gag order on Donald Trump because he's saying nasty things about the prosecutor and the judge. And they tried that with Roger Stone when he was prosecuted, and Roger Stone was given a gag order that shut down all of his social media. Roger Stone could not even post on Facebook what he had for dinner at a restaurant that night, even though it had nothing to do with the prosecution against him. So that's how far these judges can go. But I think so far the judge has not imposed a gag order. He did kind of admonish both sides to kind of cool it with the rhetoric. As you know, Michael Cohen, who's the witness for the prosecution, has been doing a lot of media too. So we'll see what happens. But in August, the attorneys will be filing these various motions to dismiss the case. Mm-hmm. The judge will have a hearing on December 4th. That's the next time we'll see Donald Trump in court. And then, there'll be a ruling a month or two after that. And then a trial if he rules against Donald Trump after that. So it's obviously interfered with the election, although it may backfire because, Larry, there's Donald Trump's base is being emboldened. He's raising money on it. Right. His supporters have increased. So I think what may be going on here may be something Machiavellian by the Democrats saying, let's go after Trump. He'll win the primary because his base is emboldened now. And great, he'll be the nominee. And we think we can knock him off better with Biden than if somebody else like DeSantis would be the nominee. So every which way you look at that, this is really a political persecution going on.
Paul, I've noticed that Hillary Clinton has not said anything at all about this. And I think, Paul, there are at least three reasons. First of all, the $800,000 payment that her husband gave to Paula Jones to settle a lawsuit that he claimed had no merit when she claimed she was a victim of sexual battery. Second, she clearly skated. She violated the Espionage Act, no question about it. Even Comey said she acted extremely recklessly, which is the standard, right. And then claimed she lacked intent when the statute did not require intent.
Right.
And the third is her campaign did use money to buy the Steele dossier. She was fined by the FEC, no handcuffs, no indictment. She just paid a fine. That was it. So she doesn't want to remind anybody about any of that. So she's kept her mouth shut.
Right. She listed the Steele dossier payment as legal expenses right. to her lawyer instead of for the Steele dossier. Well, that's what Trump did. He wrote legal expenses on his company forms. And yeah, she did get a fine. Let's see, how much was that? Wow, she got fined a whopping $8,000.
Right.
I mean, this is ridiculous. And the ironic thing, Larry, is that even if this is an illegal contribution to the Trump campaign as an in-kind contribution, the FEC rules say that the campaign must use campaign funds to pay back the source of the in-kind contribution. So if Trump had done that, they would be screaming, oh my God, he's using campaign funds to pay for a personal expense for these non-disclosure agreements. Well, he used his personal funds and they're going after him. So it's a catch-22. It's really crazy, Larry.
Paul, last thing, comment on the upcoming investigations. You've got the Georgia investigation where Donald Trump said to the Secretary of State, find me some additional votes, as if somehow that's some sort of crime. The investigation about Mar-a-Lago, and you also have the investigation of January 6th. What's your take on those three outstanding investigations?
First on the Georgia election, find me the votes. That's nothing illegal about that. Right. He's basically saying, go back to your records and find if there's other votes there for me. Totally lawful request. Moreover, the Trump lawyers have filed a motion to dismiss the grand jury findings in that case for a number of procedural reasons. So that motion is still pending. So we'll see what comes of that. With respect to Jack Smith and the special counsel, he's looking at the insurrection of the storming of the Capitol. I don't see any prosecution there. Donald Trump was not guilty of that. He said for his people, supporters to march peacefully. They can't pin that on him. By
the way, Paul, before you finish the last one, I'm surprised you used the word insurrection. As far as I know, nobody's been charged with insurrection, let alone been convicted of it. That sounds to me like the term that they use on CNN and MSNBC. I'm surprised Paul Kavanaugh used it.
This conspiracy was charged against some of the Proud Boys and so forth. So some of those have stuck, but in any event, they can't put that on Donald Trump's lap. Right. Mm-hmm. Number one, so that's a weak case. So finally, in terms of the classified documents at Mar-a-Lago, now that may have some problems there because they're talking about that not all the documents were turned over. However, we have Joe Biden who had classified documents, and here's where I think that won't go anywhere because under the current DOJ policy, they cannot prosecute a sitting president, Joe Biden, with a federal crime. So what they can, but I don't think they will do politically is, well, we won't go after Joe Biden for classified documents, but we'll prosecute Donald Trump for that. I think, again, the American people won't stand for that. That's, again, it's a showing a dual level of application of justice. It's very hypocritical. So, but I think that's probably their best case is that documents, and maybe go after not Trump himself, but maybe one of the attorneys for obstruction of justice for filing a form saying we searched diligently for documents and we didn't have any more, and yet they found some more. But again, that's very factual. So I think what's now going on is now that they see that this first charge by Bragg is a nothing burger, it may have two ways to look at it. They may say, well, look, they've already filed a criminal case against a sitting president, so we don't have to worry about that. We're going to make new law, a new precedent by going after a former U.S. president. So we'll put our toe in the water. The water feels fine on that. But again, they're going to have to think about it clearly, saying, wait a minute, we better have our ducks in a row because Bragg's case is the first out of the box. And if that case falls apart, then they're going to say we may not have a good case. So it's very complicated, and it's really a sad day for this kind of selective prosecution that's going on.
Paul, last thing. Now that Bragg has unleashed this legal virus, what do you think various attorneys general around the country who are Republicans and various county DAs who are Republicans are going to now do?
Well, I think that's a good point. I think they may look to see whether some of the Democratic candidates have violated laws in their state. But I think what's more important is that at the federal level, the House of Representatives with the House Oversight and Accountability Committee, Jim Jordan's Judiciary Committee, they're the ones that are looking into real crimes. Hello, Hunter Biden and your laptop, millions of dollars from China coming in, money laundering, tax evasion, and the U.S. Attorney in Delaware has been sitting on that for at least 3 or 4 years. So that's the thing that's got to be really done. And I think that this spring the House committees will be getting some good evidence at their hearings, and hopefully there'll be some justice there for going after real criminals like Hunter Biden.
Paul Kavanaugh, National Legal and Policy Center. Paul, thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Larry. Anytime.
Now, I know you enjoy the show, so please hit that like button and hit that subscribe button while you're at it. And scroll down and get on our mailing list. Why? Because from time to time, for reasons we don't quite understand here, YouTube has issues with our videos. I don't know why. Maybe we said too many hard-hitting things about the coronavirus shutdown, about the mask and vaccine mandates, about the election of 2020. I don't know. But if you want to make sure you don't miss any of our videos, get on our mailing list. Also, you see that little round donate button? Hit that, throw a little something in the tip jar, and make sure we can continue giving you hard-hitting, honest programming. Finally, Larry with Epoch.com, Larry with EPOCH.com. I'm Larry Elder. This has been the Larry Elder Show for Epoch Times. We've got a country to save, now more than ever, and I'll see you next time.